coming up on EKnights. See what these gamer girls are doing to close the gender gap in the gaming industry. And the air potato plant is running rampant. Meet the beetle that's going to change that. He's a drummer, a DJ, and he's blind. Find out how this Valencia student is juggling it all. And find out about an organization that brings young people together to find an alternative way to combat social injustice. Plus, check out this horse stable that is making a difference for the mentally handicapped. All that and more today on EKnights. Hey guys, I'm Paige and welcome to EKnights, UCF's one and only program with compelling stories about passionate people. Each month we'll take you on an adventure and tell you more about the people that make Central Florida the extraordinary place it is. Up first, the gaming industry has always seemed like a boys' world. Let's see how these ladies are working on closing the gender gap and fighting back against discrimination.
If someone finds out you're a female online, you're just like, it's game over. You're called out on everything.
Is that better?
People come after you, like in video games per se. And they just target you because you're female.
I have had some discrimination when I was playing video games live. When I would go to parties in high school and they would play Super Smash Brothers, everybody would play it on the Wii. You usually wouldn't get a turn until they were done playing because only the hardcore gamers were allowed to play first, and then they would let you play, and they would, tell you that they would go easy on you because they knew you couldn't play as well, and even if you weren't as experienced, if you were as experienced, they did just kind of laughed it off as being like, oh, you just had a good shot, this beginner's luck kind of thing.
It's intimidating for females in an all-male environment. It's intimidating. Some males and some females don't tend to stray from something that they're comfortable with. You have to make yourself assertive. You have to gain their respect first. You just gotta push forward and try to get past that, because it can be intimidating being the only female in an all-male environment.
We need to rethink the way we teach it and we represent it in the media. It's gonna take a while, but I mean the best way to do it is just to make sure that girls know that they are welcomed in the industry.
I see the gender gap changing in the future because there's a lot more females now in the gaming industry, and they're becoming more assertive. It's not like it is back then. Having a female in the industry is very beneficial due to the different tactics and different strategies that they have. I play mostly Halo, the Halo series. I started playing in 9th grade, where I didn't feel a lot of females were playing. I didn't find a lot of females playing that game, Halo at the time. And I was very intimidated at first. I got trashed on, trash talked to, called out on. Because of what I went through when I was younger, I want to show them that they are wrong and that they can't beat me down to where I don't know what I'm talking about.
I have a textbook that I'm reading right now for my game design class that is meant to let people into the program. It's the class you need to take to continue on in the program, and it's a textbook that everybody needs to read, and it has an entire chapter in there about the differences of different genders and what they like in video games. And it has the same viewpoints of somebody from the 50s, where females like things that are nurturing, and it really references Barbie fashion game in the book, and that's what girls predominantly like. And it's very angering to see that it's written in stone, and people are reading that right now and thinking that guys need to like violent video games and girls need to like fashion and cooking video games, instead of just looking at people as people and their different interests.
I see the gender a gap changing in the future because there's a lot more females now in the gaming industry, and they're becoming more assertive. It's not like it is back then when you have to, like, way back when you have women are not very assertive. Like, it's now getting to the point where we're equal, more equal than we've ever been before, and they're not as scared as they were to essentially work in an all-male environment.
You need to be able to show girls that, you know, there are girls that play video games, there are girls that design video games, there are video games that are geared more towards the female audience instead of completely ignoring them. I mean, the best way to do it is just to make sure that girls know that they are welcomed in the industry and are respected.
What a great story about girl power in the gaming industry. Now, here with us in the studio, we have Kelly. So why do you think it was so important to empower female gamers?
I think it is important to talk about that because in our current generation, we're trying to get more females into the gaming industry. It's right now predominantly male, and sometimes females feel underpowered or underestimated by what they can do, and so it's good to show that they don't have to feel that way. They can join the industry and they shouldn't feel discriminated by guys.
And then where do you see it going? Do you see that there might be a little bit more equality when guys kind of realize that girls can play video games too?
I think nowadays in our current generation, guys are more accepting of girls joining the gaming industry. They do offer a different creative aspect and a creative mindset, which is very beneficial. And I think that girls are feeling more that they could join in and feel accepted and respected.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here with me. Switching gears, the air potato plant has been more than just a nuisance for gardeners and native species alike. Learn more about the little bug that scientists say will help control the species population.
My name is Sherry Williams. I'm a biologist for the Natural Lands program. Air potato was introduced in the 30s and 40s as a horticultural or ornamental vine. It's from Asia and North Africa. So it was introduced in South Florida. It's escaped in South Florida but made its way to Central Florida, where we just have the right climate and conditions for it to spread the way it does. The air potato is listed as a noxious weed in the U.S. It's on the state noxious weed list as well. So that's basically preventing any trade or movement of the plant throughout the state and between states. And so it climbs to try to get the most optimal areas, and it covers and it shades out plants beneath it, which actually disrupts the habitat. So, you know, we have different types of habitats where animals occur. Well, when it shades out those habitats and kills off all the plants underneath it, then that habitat is no longer viable for the animals or plants. So it really decreases the diversity of an area. It happened to be that the air potato beetle was kind of a joint project between the state and the feds. They went ahead and they do a lot of testing, and it takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years for them to be testing that particular species of beetle. Only actually eats the Dioscorea bulbifera, which is our air potato.
One beetle, so its larvae stage and the adult stage, can eat about 30 square feet of leaf tissue in its lifetime. So the beetles are dispersing really, really well. We've monitored dispersal up to 13 miles, but one female can lay about 2,000 to 4,000 eggs. So you can see, and their life cycle is about 5 to 6 weeks long. So you can see how about every month or so, their population just increases exponentially because they're laying thousands of eggs. So you release a few hundred, then you have thousands in a month and tens of thousands a month later from that. So their populations get really, really big. Then in the fall, as the vines senesce, they do feed some on the potatoes that are growing, but it's not enough to kill the potatoes. That's more to get some carbohydrates for energy to develop fat bodies to make it through the winter. This is pretty typical right here. They'll chew a lot of holes in it. It doesn't necessarily kill the leaves though, but by doing that all over the vine, it disrupts the photosynthesis so that the tuber that's underground can't get as much energy as it normally would get. And so that tuber, we believe, we're doing a lot of research on this, the tuber then will shrink each year. So we've already seen after just 2 years of large-scale releases, and we've been releasing for 3 years. So the first year was more research-focused. In the areas we've released the beetles, the vines are only getting maybe 12 feet high versus 30 feet high. It's producing less bulbils. So instead of having bulbils in the ground looking like this in the fall, the bulbils are hard to find and they're all very small, which is great. That means we're slowing the spread of it as well. And what we presume will happen after a couple of years, those tubers will become so stressed, some will die. Now, this will probably never eradicate air potato. It's more of control. That's why we call it biological control. So it'll just keep the vines in check to a point where it's not a nuisance anymore and it's not really causing problems. In 3 years, we've released 300,000 beetles at close to 1,000 sites in almost 50 counties in Florida. So we put out a great deal of beetles. So conservation lands, environmental lands, city, state, county parks. And what we wanted to do was, in those areas that are protected, build up large populations of the beetle and let them disperse on their own. It truly involves everyone that's in Florida, and everyone has a stake in Florida and eradicating this vine.
I think we did catch it. We caught it on the perfect part of the curve of where it was exponentially growing out of control. We caught it just in time to start making a dent in the population of air potato before it became too destructive to the plant communities out there. The recovery of the natural plant communities will probably be 100%.
Wow, I had no idea that this was even affecting Florida. Joining me now is Chris. Chris is in the studio. How did you even find out about this?
Well, actually, air potato, I learned about this when I was a kid over in Melbourne, Palm Bay. I grew up, and there was air potato everywhere in the trails that I would like to hike on and ride bikes. And just growing up, I would see them, and I didn't think anything of them. The potato balls, we would throw them around and just, you know, throw them at each other, throw them across canals, and just see how far we could throw them. And then, you know, as time goes on, 5 years, 10 years, I noticed it got really, really thick in those areas, and it just drew my attention, and I looked into it a little bit more, and it was just something very interesting for me.
Yeah, and then so why are these beetles so important?
Well, the beetles are great because they're going to biologically control the air potato leaf problem, which is wiping out certain native plants.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for being with us here.
Okay, thank you.
From eradicating a plant to eradicating a stigma, we have another story about breaking down barriers. After losing his vision as a child, Emmanuel was told that he wouldn't be able to do much of anything. Now he's here rocking out on the drums with a message to everyone who stood in his way.
I'm Emmanuel. I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, South America. I'm a drummer. The way that I use music, it's a tool. Music is definitely a tool to transmit a message, to convey that message, or to express anger, happiness. Obviously, I'm blind, and the way that happened was we have a disease called Wagner syndrome. That what it does is that it makes the retina weak, and any heavy blows to the head could make the retina detach. And that's what happened to me when I was 6 years old. And a kid pushed me and I hit my head on this side. And I became blind right there and then. I never really broke down or cried, because when you're 6 years old and your mom tells you everything is gonna be okay, everything is gonna be okay, right? You believe that, like, you know, with all your heart. So in between 6 and 13 years old is when I actually became fully blind. I always was involved in music, but when I started learning the drum set when I was 13, right after I finally just totally lost my vision, it gave me something to look towards, a goal. All right, well, I'm blind now, but I'm learning how to do this, so I guess I can make the best out of it. There were many obstacles when I became blind. My mom always, my family in general, always wanted me to keep pursuing an education, especially in South America. But it always was this professor or person that would always raise the flag that, oh, well, this is gonna be hard because you're blind. I feel that a lot of times in workplaces and things that I have done and stuff that I've been involved with, I always have to prove myself. And I can tell anybody my accomplishments, but they don't really become real till I actually do those things in front of people. I started my professional music studies here in the United States, and when I went to Valencia Community College, one of the counselors there told me, hey, you won't be able to do the music program. And I listened to that. It took me 2 years to realize, hey, I can do this and I will do this, and it doesn't matter if I'm blind. Music software has enabled me to be able to read the music, memorize the music, and then play it. So I work a little different than other people, but still works out. When I finally was able to prove to people, hey, I actually can do this, I feel, hey, I'm part of something great. There's been a lot of great guitar players that they were blind. There's been a lot of great piano players, and now let's see what we can do on some percussion. I want to be a composer, and that's what I'm going to school for. I have plans to open a studio and do some of that as well, help others get their stuff out there, and just communicate this message that I have. I guess the main thing that I'm trying to do is just to let everybody know and to let people like me know that, hey, there's a way to do things, and don't you ever take no for an answer. And whatever you have in your heart it's been placed there for a reason. And if it's in your heart, you should be able to play it, write it down, and perform it in front of people. There's a bright future, and sky's the limit, and you make your own future.
What a great story. I think this just goes to show that, you can put your mind and do anything. And to tell us a little bit more about the story, I'm here with Jessica in the studio. So how did you even find Emmanuel?
Well, Emmanuel was actually Kimberly's friend. Kimberly, he was the one who, she was the one who kind of reached out for this whole entire thing. So she met up with him, and we learned about his story because he lost his eyesight at 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So she knew exactly, how he'd always been struggling with this, yeah.
And then, so why did you think it was important to do a story on this?
Well, I feel like a lot of people, like especially Emmanuel, a lot of people like Emmanuel and people just in general are always told they can't do something. So we love the fact that Emmanuel was just like, you know what, no, I'm gonna do this. I don't care what anybody says, I'm gonna play the drums. So it's amazing, and he's doing great at it. I definitely see really good things for him later on.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was insane, like everything that he can do, and doesn't even have vision.
Yeah, and he like DJs on the weekends, he plays his drums. My favorite part of the whole entire process was probably just seeing all of those students. They were so creative. It was just an amazing experience to see those creative students.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that.
No problem.
Up next, Dream Defenders, a group that is making waves in Florida's political sphere. Meet the organization that is providing hope for diversity in a new generation.
Dream Defenders is an organization that was founded after the killing of Trayvon Martin. Folks got fed up, and they decided they wanted to build power for Black and brown youth, and to combat issues such as mass incarceration, the school-to-prison pipeline, racial profiling, police brutality, and stuff like that.
Yeah, so Dream Defenders is like a family, and we try to keep that community and that type of friendliness in the organization. We believe in relational organizing, and what that means is this isn't a group of people that you just do actions with and then you go home and you forget about them, or you just do these things with and you don't really know them. It's all about knowing each other and being friends and actually having personal relationships with these people.
The Dream Defenders' biggest accomplishment is uniting the young people of today all around the world.
Everyone is feeling inspired. They are getting the message across. Everyone is just encouraging each other, and it's so welcoming, and it's like a huge family.
I feel strongly about this, especially growing up in South Florida. I saw the school-to-prison pipeline happening since elementary school all the way through high school.
I have a little brother at home. He's 10, and I never want to turn on the news and see a situation that happened with Trayvon Martin or Mike Brown, and my brother is the person.
A friend of mine that I grew up with, his brother was murdered by police in his own home. And so when things started happening in Ferguson with Mike Brown, that started to hit really close to home for me.
I had only been involved with Dream Defenders for probably about 4 months, and I can't believe I signed up to do this when I did, but I'm very glad that I did. Dream Defenders held a press conference in the rotunda in the Capitol, where we kind of just laid out our dream agenda. And our dream agenda was, for this legislative session, we want you all to focus on these issues, because these are issues that we as an organization care about, that's impacting our communities, that's impacting communities of Black and brown youth and people. And so we had this dream agenda, and we talked about different issues. We talked about immigrants' rights, we talked about the school to prison pipeline, racial profiling, all of that. And the press conference comprised of 6 people just kind of talking about each issue and how it's personally affected them. And I was speaking on behalf of immigrants' rights. And it really was a powerful moment for me, because it took a lot of strength to stand up in front of a bunch of cameras and a bunch of cops in the Capitol in Tallahassee, you know, kind of saying, I'm an immigrant, you know, I'm undocumented, I'm here illegally, you know, and this is me, and this is my life, and this is how I feel, and this is how things are affecting me, and I want change. The Dream Defenders are very big fans of chanting and singing, and so one of the things you will always notice is that it's loud and it's lively. There's a lot of chanting, there's a lot of singing, there's a lot of people talking, somebody probably has a guitar. There's a lot of amazing and passionate people in Dream Defenders. And to be honest, like everyone has said, you know, we are a very young organization, so I can't say for sure like what the future holds for us.
My involvement in Dream Defenders has greatly impacted my life. It's given me a different perspective on a lot of people and cultures.
When I walk into a Dream Defenders event, I'm immediately faced with so much emotion and passion filling the room. There's so many people there chanting and singing, and you know, so many friendly faces, and it's always just such an amazing moment, because there's just this air of love.
You don't have to be recognized for it, but as long as you know you had an impact in society to make a change, that's good enough.
What a great package about some young people in the state of Florida fighting for those who can't fight for themselves anymore. To tell us a little bit more about the package, here's Deja. So how did you find Dream Defenders?
I actually was just looking for interesting stories, and a friend of mine told me about Dream Defenders, and I was like, oh, wow, I've heard about this so many times. I'm from South Florida. They do a lot in Miami. I have friends in Tallahassee. They've done a lot in Tallahassee as well. So I found out that they have one here, so I decided to interview them and just get more information.
Okay, and then, so what are the big things that they do, and what are they really trying to fight?
They're pushing for education and tolerance for people who may not really have someone to back up their American dream, and to help them feel like their American dream is possible. That's why they're called the Dream Defenders. So they basically help minorities just understand more about what the issues that are affecting them and how they can impact the community on their own.
Well, that sounds like a great organization. So thanks for telling us a little bit more about it. From social injustice to horseback riding, here's another organization that's making a difference. Meet the woman who is teaching a brand new skill to mentally handicapped and traumatized youth.
We all kind of know, maybe not consciously, but we all kind of know what we need to do and what our skills are. This takes that person and allows them to create metaphors for their life and work through whatever it is they need to work through. My name is Kathy Wilkes, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Florida, and I've got a business doing equine assisted psychotherapy. First got interested in horses as a little girl, but never had any access to them. Instead got my education in marriage and family therapy and began working first with sexual trauma and then with at-risk children, adolescents, and their families in a psychiatric setting. It was during that time that I became aware of this type of work, combining the therapy I was doing with at-risk kids and horses, and that intrigued me. A lot of the kids that we've been working with lately are the abused, neglected, rejected, and abandoned kids, particularly kids that are living currently at the Florida United Methodist Children's Home. We also work with other kids in the community that are at risk, that have had behavioral problems or trauma. My favorite part is doing it outside in nature, which is so healing in of itself. It doesn't feel like work, although it is. It's very definitely work, and it's very definitely powerful therapy. I'm not a rider, and our clients aren't riders. They don't ever ride these horses. It's 100% on the ground. What we're working on is often trauma and depression and social skills and things that are a little deeper mentally than that. So this is psychotherapy. I can do play therapy, but bringing the horse in, there's an unpredictability, and the client is going to have to make choices and use skills and develop skills that maybe they've never had to do before. We might ask them to take some of this junk, buckets and poles and ropes and things, and come out here in the round pen and build an obstacle that the horse could go over. And it's so interesting to see that, because sometimes they do these really intricate, they'll use every piece of junk I have and build this intricate obstacle course. The directions are built an obstacle that the horse can go over. There have been a lot of research projects done around the world by EKnights to show the efficacy of this work. They're showing an increase in coping skills, a decrease in depression, decrease in anger outbursts, and I think that is so amazing to hear. If you need something done, you got a goal, and you just stand around and twiddle your thumbs, is it going to happen? Maybe, but most of the time you have to put forth some energy. So if you want to change your life, you can't just wait for that to happen. You have to make it happen. You have to put some energy into it. And once they get that, then they go and they can change their life.
That was a great story about an outlet for the youth in America. I think it's a great topic. And so here to tell us a little bit more about it, we're here with Alice. So how did you meet Kathy?
I didn't know Kathy personally, but I did some research and I found out in Lake Helen, Florida, they do a special youth counseling session that is with Rising Star Counseling, which is Kathy's main program. But she was counseling troubled youth and teens in her office, and she just wasn't getting the results that she wanted because it was behind four walls, and that she wanted the youth to go out and be able to express themselves in a more natural environment. So she bought some property and 3 horses, and they were able to start their counseling program outside where they could really be more expressive.
And then, so why do you think it's so important for these type of teens and youth to have this outlet?
A lot of the youth that she's counseling, as I said, are troubled. So they have a lot of social skills they need to work on that they wouldn't be able to do in a normal office. So the more they're able to touch the horses and interact with the horses, the better off they'll become in the end.
All right, well, thank you so much for telling us a little bit more about it.
Thank you.
Looks like that's all the time we have for now. Thank you so much for joining us here on EKnights. For more information on the people and places we visited today, be sure to check out our website at communication.cos.ucf.edu/EKnights. Be sure to tune in next month for even more compelling stories about passionate people. Until then, I'm Paige Sterner.